The artists at Moonbot Studios in Shreveport will have to make room on their shelves for another award after taking home an Oscar for their animated short film, The Fantastic Flying Books of Mr. Morris Lessmore, at the 2012 Academy Awards. The film was a work of passion for all involved, and this is just a quick look at how the film was made.
You obviously start with an idea and a story, and to flesh out a story like this, a lot of times, and in this case, it was not written down. It's not something that someone had typed or a script. It's just more of a concept, and so we start on just a pad of paper just like this, and we literally sketch out very rough and quick all of our ideas, the moments. We start turning them into scenes, and then we scan those all in and put it into an animatic or a rough story cut. Usually that looks something like this, where it's basically putting the whole movie together, and we're making all of our editing decisions, we're making sound decisions from these rough drawings, and this is going to be basically creating a concrete blueprint for the film that we're going to create for the animators and the technical artists. And then when we get through this process, or during this process, we also have to design everything. So that's where character design and prop design and environment design comes in as well. All right, so once we have our blueprint down, once we have the storyboard and the animatic and everything cut together, we want to work on whittling the designs to be very specific so that the technical artists and animators have their reference for how things are going to look visually. That involves a lot of things from environment design, set design, character design, prop design, even doing a script pass, a visual pass of the story that is just color, so people know what kind of color and what direction lights are going to be and simple things like that. So, I mean, with Morris Lessmore, we started with a sketch that Bill did a few years ago, and then we started trying to adapt that a little more towards our Buster Keaton influence. So we'll go back and forth with drawings, so we finally have a turnaround of the character that is very specific, so that the modelers can create that character in CG. With this production, only the characters and props were done in CG. The rest of it, we built miniatures. So that process was kind of big, but to put it simple, it's just we made things with our hands. There wasn't anything bigger, no bigger secret to that. But when we were doing it, we needed some reference to some design, so you can see sometimes we had to take every little piece of furniture and design it before we built it. So not only do we have to flesh out the characters, their poses, their expressions, but we also have to design everything from a chair to a library.
This is pretty much the shot that broke my back on the short. It was supposed to be two different shots. I'm going to go ahead and play the animatic ball quickly, and you see Morris hits, and then it cuts to a different shot over here, and he looking around, and here's another cut of him climbing, and there's a really odd cut of him running, and we're out. And when I first saw this shot, it really didn't make any sense to me. It didn't make sense to me why he's running. It didn't make sense to me what's the importance of that book to him. So I asked Bill and Brandon to give me a shot, just give me a shot at it, just to give it a different pass on the animatic or blocking. So since I had sort of a clear idea of what I wanted, I started right away in 3D, and I've done something that looks like this. I animated the house by itself, and then I pretty much drew Morris in 2D over that 3D environment, and this is how I communicated my idea of what the performance should look like. That's him. He just keeps trying to reach to that book. He keeps running after it, keeps skipping them, and we're out. And just my whole point was show Morris, show the house, and show how much he wants his book back, and those were the points that were missing at the beginning. So I show it to them, and they say, "Okay, cool," and that was a great thing for them to say, "Oh yeah, go ahead and do it." So after we do the pass on performance pass, if you will, we go into, and then it gets greenlit. We get into what we call 3D blocking, which is the same thing, but you'll realize the motion is more poppy. It's more like it pops from one pose to the other, and that's what we call the stepped pose, or the stepped phase, or the blocking phase. And this is the 3D translation of that initial planning, and we're out. So they say, okay, good, that looks good, but I want you to do 1, 2, and 3. Now that they see it in 3D, more things comes to, the more ideas that comes to mind. Oh, let him do the Buster Keaton thing over here, and let him do whatever Buster Keaton does there. So it's just pretty much a ping pong game. I'll give you something, you just bounce it back, and so forth and so on. After we have all these conversations and all these discussions over the performance, we agree upon doing stuff like that. And this is a more finished version of the work. He's trying to catch the book over here, but the book is invisible because the book came in later, on a later phase. And now the shot got a lot longer, and we kept it in the space so they can scale it later in composition. So, I mean, in general, it's just, we get the blueprints from the story artist, from the animatics. If any one of us feel like, oh, I can make it stronger, can I have a shot at it, and we have the time, they'll do it, and then if it works, we'll just keep going at it. And, you know, it's just a game of reading your director, knowing what they might like and might not like, and it's always a crapshoot anyways. But sometimes you can avoid losing more than other times, and that's how it is.
So after the animation's done out there, we get files that look something like this, where it's just a pretty basic, here's the character Morris during the storm sequence when he's blowing away from the building. And it has, you know, basic textures on it, but nothing too crazy. And then in this program, Maya, we're able to like light it like you would, you know, in a physical world. I just added in lights that, you know, kind of light him from, or coming from this side, and just tried to match the stuff that they shot with the miniature set. So we were given reference plates and the background plates that artists had painted over, and we had to make the character look like it was inside of that frame. And then after this process, we render out all of the frames and bring it into another program, and it looks something like this. Like, this is the final image of just the character from the shot. And then this is the image from the miniature shoot. That had some touch-ups, some like paint overs from the art team. And we got a bunch of practical effects like dry ice and smoke and dust that Brandon had done with a small team over downtown. And we were able to put those together with the backplate and the character, and we get the final image or the final sequence. That looks something like that. So this part of the process is really cool because we get to get all of the pieces that everyone else had done and put it all together and, you know, show people the final look.
So when we were first on set, we had over 300 shots that we had to complete, and we had to make sure every shot that we filmed miniature-wise would work with CG characters. So I took care of a lot of the information that this CG, you know, animators use later on in the process, so that they can know how far Morris would be in space or how far the characters would be in space, so they would look proportionately right and everything like that, so they would mesh better. So I counted a lot of frames. Before we started animating, we try to get all the frame counts in there and figure all that stuff out so the animation would flow more smoothly. We took track of a lot of the shots, and we actually had to move some of them around because they didn't play out the way we wanted them to the first time around. We would get all the shots from the technical directors in the lighting department after they were animated and lit, and we would just proceed to place everything together the way that the directors want them to, making sure the music feels right and making sure we're getting the message across in the right way, in the right pacing. And it took a long time to record all the information, like not just for the miniatures, but for all the shots that were animated, to record all that information, make sure it played right so it fit into the cut the way it was supposed to. And everyone worked really hard to make it to the end of the process, and we couldn't be happier of how it turned out.